In the forests of Sarawak, in the middle of the night, a woman stood at her door, listening. Somewhere out in the dark, a rooster was crowing, the same rooster she had watched die that evening.
From forgotten folklore to hidden histories, some records demand to be found.
This happened many years ago. The storyteller's family lived in Sarawak at the time. His grandfather worked in logging, so the family home was a wooden house built deep in the forest. One day, the grandfather brought back a live rooster. It was slaughtered that evening, but for whatever reason, left unprepared, hanging outside by the cooking area to be dealt with the next day. That night, the grandfather stayed out at the logging camp for his shift. The house held only the grandmother and her youngest son, still a small child. Deep in the night, the grandmother heard a sound, a rooster, crowing. She froze. That can't be right. Didn't we kill it this evening? At first, she thought she'd misheard. Then it came again, closer now, from just outside the house. Maybe the bird hadn't died after all, she thought. Maybe it was still hanging out there, half alive, flapping in the dark. So she went out to look. The forest at night is silent, just the crowing and wind moving through the trees. She turned toward the cooking area, where the rooster hung, and stopped. Something was already there. A pale shape, hovering at the carcass. It was not a person. It was a woman. More precisely, it was a woman's head. No body. Below the neck hung a tangle of organs and entrails, swaying as it floated. Its mouth was at the dead rooster, feeding. And then the worst part. The crowing came again. And it came from the thing itself. A dead bird's cry, from a dead woman's mouth. The grandmother couldn't move. She stood rooted until the thing finally lifted from the carcass and drifted away into the trees, then ran inside and shut the door. At first light, she put the boy on the motorcycle with her and rode out to find the rest of the family. There was an uncle in the family, a spirit medium, a man who handled rituals and folk ceremonies. He listened to the grandmother's description and named it at once, a Pontianak. A woman had died giving birth in that forest years before, he said, along with her baby. The uncle believed the spirit had come that night to take a child and replace the one she lost. But here is the strange part. In Malay folklore, a Pontianak appears as a whole woman dressed in white. A floating head trailing its own entrails, drawn to the smell of fresh blood. That is a different creature. The Malays call her the Penanggalan. Whether the family's telling merged two spirits into one, or something stood in that forest that fits no single name, no one can say. What the family kept coming back to, for years afterward, was this. The uncle said it came for a child, but it never approached the door. It stayed at the carcass, it fed, and it left. From that night on, the grandmother never stepped outside alone after dark again. The next story comes from the other side of the country, Malacca, an old town full of old buildings and older stories. He traveled constantly for work. Malaysia, Japan, Vietnam, always alone. But the trip he remembers most began with a colleague picking him up at the airport and dropping him at a hotel just for the arrival night. He'd move on in the morning. It wasn't a chain hotel. It was old, handsome in a way, built almost entirely of wood, wooden stairs, wooden corridors, wooden walls, dark timber everywhere, and the lights kept low. He checked in and carried his bags up to a second-floor room. Traveling alone so much, he had a habit. First thing in any hotel room, run the tap, check it works, check the pressure. This time, the water came out red. Red like blood. He didn't jump to ghosts. Old building, old pipes, rust, probably. He left the tap running, and after half a minute, the water ran clear. He put it out of his mind. He set down his bags, sat on the edge of the bed, and turned on the television. The room was quiet, just the air conditioner and the TV. Then, Something gray shot over his head, too fast to see what it was. It slammed into the television, and instead of dropping, it bounced. Once, twice, 3 times. Off the wall, off the cabinet, into the television again. The whole room was collision noise. He describes it as a gray sphere, like a squash ball, but the truth is he never saw it clearly, just a gray blur ricocheting. It lasted seconds, then it stopped. The room went silent. He looked at the television first. It had been hit. How many times? Not a scratch. No crack. No dent. It hadn't even moved. That was enough. He went straight down to the front desk. "I'd like to change rooms." The clerk asked why. He hesitated, then told the truth. "There's something in that room. A ghost." The clerk didn't answer. She just glanced at her colleague. The colleague glanced back. Neither said a word. A few seconds passed. Then, "I'm sorry, there are no rooms tonight." And then, quietly, "If you're frightened, you're welcome to sit in the lobby until morning." Notice what didn't happen. Nobody offered to go up and check. Nobody doubted him. Not for a second. As if they already knew what happened upstairs. The hotel sat in the middle of nowhere. At night, beyond a few yellow lamps, there was nothing but forest pressing against the glass. Sitting exposed in that open lobby until dawn, with whatever was upstairs somewhere above him, sounded worse than the room. So he went back up. He took out the prayer beads he always carried, wrapped them around his hand, and slept holding them. Nothing else came. At first light he packed, went down, and waited for his colleague. In the car, he told the whole story. The colleague just said, "Some places in Malacca have stories like that." He wasn't the first, it turned out. Over the years, others came back from that hotel with stories of their own. Word spread, colleague to colleague, until eventually the company stopped putting anyone there at all. But to this day, what stays with him isn't the gray sphere. It's that glance, the one the two clerks exchanged. Because he is certain they already knew. Upstairs, there was something. The last story climbs high into the mountains, to a businesswoman who dealt with her midnight visitors in her own way. She traveled often through Southeast Asia for work. One trip brought her to Malaysia, to a hotel high in the mountains. Her colleagues took the rooms across the hall. Her room was more than 10 floors up. The room next door, she gathered quickly, had livelier guests. A television turned up loud, laughter, voices through the wall. Tourists, clearly here on vacation and not quiet about it. She unpacked and ignored it. Then, not long after she finished unpacking, she heard knocking. Not at the door. Not from next door. On the glass. Outside the window. More than 10 floors up. Nothing out there to stand on. She didn't dwell on it. She was tired. Before bed, she said casually to the empty room, "I'm going to sleep now. Don't mess with me." And she slept. Sometime in the night, she woke up. On the floor, beside the door. Sleepwalking, she told herself, and climbed back into bed. The next time she woke, she was lying in the bathroom. That was the limit. She sat up and addressed the room. "Listen, everyone, I'm here for work, not to play. If you really need to mess with someone, if you want someone to play with, go next door." You can hear them yourself. They're here to play. And just like that, the room went quiet and stayed quiet until dawn. At breakfast, her colleagues from across the hall asked if she'd heard it too, a television blaring and voices coming from the room beside hers almost the entire night. She asked the front desk about that room, the loud one with the tourists. The clerk checked and looked up. That room had been empty. The entire time. No one was registered there that night. No one at all. All she said, smiling, was,
Maybe whatever was in my room really did go next door to join them.
later she heard the stories about that area, a casino nearby. Years of suicides, people said, and the hauntings that grew out of them. True or not, nobody knows. But what she remembers isn't the rumors. It's that night. The moment she finished saying, "I'm here to work, not to play," the room truly went still. Some stories become legends. Others survive only because someone remembers them. Maybe there's an ordinary explanation for every one of these. That's for you to decide. But if you're ever deep in the forest at night, and you hear a rooster crowing, and you know that rooster is already dead, stay inside. Don't go and look. History only leaves us the fragments. The rest lives in the shadows. Thank you for exploring these dark corners with me tonight. If you enjoy where folklore meets history, hit that like button and subscribe to join the circle for our next tale.